I'd like to thank you for allowing me into your homes for this sixth episode of Season 4 of Esoteric Science Roundtable. And I want to make one quick announcement, and that is to mention the upcoming metaphysical and philosophical meeting that we here at Esoteric Science Roundtable and the fine folks over at Therefore I Am, Jeff Gutierrez and crew, co-host each and every third Wednesday of the month. And for the month of December, that's going to be falling on the 15th. And so we would encourage anyone that's interested that would be interested in coming to the meeting. We start at 8 p.m. and end whenever people are ready to leave. We always meet upstairs at Opal Divines, again, the address 6th and Rio Grande. And if you're interested in things that you've seen on the show, this show or Jeff's show, or you have something else that you're just interested in talking about or listening to other people's conversations, you're more than welcome to come. And very casual, very relaxed, and very free. And so we encourage anyone that's interested to please come by and check out the metaphysical and philosophical meetings that we co-host each month. So that being said, that's pretty much all I wanted to get to in the way of announcements. And I'm going to go ahead and start getting into the show proper. And today I would like to discuss the topic, Taking the Kingdom. And that is from a biblical reference that basically says, the kingdom of heaven must be taken by force. It sometimes is also interpreted as the kingdom of heaven must be taken by violence. And so I want to get into some aspects of the meaning of that particular phrase and to consider some aspects of the kingdom and the methods or means of taking the kingdom, so-called. This is obviously the month of December, and so traditionally, Jeff Gutierrez on Therefore I Am has been doing his Son of God series, and you may have seen some rebroadcasts recently that bolster his claims, and rightly so, that he would feel that the idea of Jesus and other saviors that have appeared throughout time in different cultures since time immemorial have all been based on some idea, some myth, some pattern that recurs and repeats itself over time in these various places around the globe. And so apparently Jeff's not going to be doing so much of that this upcoming month. He's going to be getting more into hermetics and the as above, so below axiom, the hermetic axiom that entails. And so I don't really want to get to rehash too much of the old shows that I've done either, but I am going to do a couple of shows related to the mysteries of Christ, so-called, for this month of December. And this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, if not my favorite topic of discussion, esoteric subject for discussion. The Christian mysteries are something that I've always been intrigued by myself since a very, very early age, since about age 7 or 8, when I started reading the Bible and trying to penetrate into the mysteries of those words myself for my own understanding early on, and trying to delve in and make some sense of this tradition that I was being raised into. And so I've again, always had an interest in discerning the message behind these words for a very long time, and I've just continued throughout my life in various aspects and various capacities to try to bring forth some understanding of what exactly these words mean and can convey to us. And in particular, the pattern or the example that we have of Jesus through Christ in the gospel narratives that give us much insight and give us a definite pattern, a way by which we can mold our own lives, and we can understand certain great truths by enacting or embracing what was played out in Palestine over 2,000 years ago, and also keeping in mind the previous, again, saviors from other times and other places that also add to the testimony of this divine approach, this cyclic divine approach that we find recurring throughout time and manifesting itself in various places on the globe for the uplifting of our humanity. And so that's something to be considered as well. The idea that the kingdom of heaven must be taken by force, and this is sometimes interpreted as the kingdom of heaven must be taken by violence. Either way, it's this is something that is not really considered very often, at least in my understanding, in the various Christian congregations, and that not much time is spent on these concepts. Also, a couple of other things to tie in with that phrase from the Bible: "Unto you is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven." That also is something that ties in intimately, because again, the kingdom of heaven is mentioned. And also another saying, "Seek ye first the kingdom." And so obviously the kingdom of heaven must have some great implications for Christians and the Christian religion. And the seeking of that kingdom, the attaining of that kingdom, also is something that must be worthy of some consideration for it to be laid out in the way that it is in the Bible narratives. And so, again, in my understanding, to my satisfaction, these questions have never really been touched upon in any church service that I've ever attended or that I've ever seen, broadcast on television or what have you. So, as far as I'm able to really ascertain, these topics aren't really considered, even just in a real precursory manner. They're really kind of glazed over for the most part, it would seem like. And I think it's because some of these ideas, like the kingdom of heaven, the phrase "the kingdom of heaven," oftentimes just is considered as some vague, mystical, maybe hanging out with the angels on the clouds, playing the harp kind of scenario or something, and that it's just some maybe afterworld kind of scenario, or again something vague and something that's just very mystical and doesn't have any real accessibility and doesn't have any real practical, concrete meaning for us here as humanity on the earth plane. And I would say that is very far from the actuality of what is taking place. And again, this cycle of divine approach that through time has gradually moved forward and has gradually taken on more significance in the minds of men, as we become more evolved and the nature of mind in humanity becomes more active and potent, that we seek more understanding and we ask more questions, more so, and less do people just read the words in any book or for any source of information for that matter and just take them so blindly. More often in this day and age, we find people questioning, wanting to know what's below the surface and wanting to know the cause behind the outer effects. And so again, considering the kingdom of heaven, that the kingdom of heaven, as we're told, must be taken by force, and also that unto you is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. And so again, considering the idea of mysteries, the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. If we understand from studying comparative religion and we look into the symbolism behind what is often termed initiation science, we can see through history a mystery tradition that has evolved and unraveled and maintained itself throughout humanity's consciousness for a very, very long time. And part of our human history is the unfolding of this divine approach through history, through our humanity, and how it is influenced and helped us to create and ultimately co-create with the divine as we're able to ascertain, comprehend, and apply these mysteries, so-called. Now, anyone that is familiar, again, with comparative religion to a certain degree, or that's studied the ancient wisdom tradition from previous times, might have some insight or understanding into the mystery tradition. This has been a process by which, throughout time, those certain individuals that were deemed by the watchers in these particular organizations, groups, and outreaches, if you will, were able to gauge somewhat the more promising individuals, the young men and women that they could put aside and groom certain qualities within these individuals so that these individuals could take on some form of work to help humanity out in some way or another. And so this mystery tradition has been with humanity for ages and ages and ages, thousands of years, and it receded more or less about 2,000 years ago, roughly speaking, when Christianity became more popular and the mystery tradition of old had to go underground in order, well, this is right and proper as far as a cyclic transition, as far as what was becoming the main body of belief, which was Christianity in the West, and that the older method of instructing individuals and passing along certain ancient information and certain sacred information was relegated to again, a more underground means. And so the popularity and the above ground movings and shakings of the mystery tradition definitely receded, and also practitioners of these various mystery traditions became more and more persecuted throughout time. And so this also is a symptom of this transition taking place. But nonetheless, when we read in the gospel narratives words attributed to Christ, that unto you is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, it really would be helpful for us to consider, in my estimation, again, the mystery tradition, and to do a quick history lesson, and not necessarily a quick history lesson even, because there's so much information written, contained within the writings of the early church fathers and in various historical capacities that give much insight into this mystery tradition and can show, again, the progression of divinity throughout our humanity from the earliest days forward and continuing forward into the future. And so, again, taking some kind of an understanding from a study of the mystery tradition will only help understand how, with the advent of Christianity, a new form of the mystery tradition was being implemented and instilled into our human consciousness. Because, again, cyclic manifestation and unfolding is a necessary part of our humanity. And as we reach a certain culmination, then we, from that plateau, collect ourselves and we try to gain new and higher ground. And this is the story of, again, our human evolution, our unfolding process. And so this mystery tradition has been available throughout time to help mold and guide behind the scenes somewhat what is taking place and what is playing out, and the great ideals, whether they be religious ideals, governmental, what have you, that find their way into mainstream thinking, that are a component at some level of this mystery tradition that maintains itself and has refined itself through a Christian mystery tradition that is very comprehensive. And so, again, these ideas are not very widely discussed. Again, either the kingdom of heaven or the fact that we are supposed to know the mysteries and seek the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. Okay, also considering the idea of the kingdom of heaven itself, rather than taking consideration of some vague mystical location or condition, if we can think in terms of symbolic language and understand more so what the kingdom of heaven has symbolically veiled or indicated to us, if we're able to look a little bit more carefully beneath the scenes. And so with that being the case, again, the kingdom of heaven, from my understanding and from the testimony through the religious traditions of the world and through the accomplishments of great men and women throughout time, have paid homage or paid testimony to the fact that there is indeed a kingdom of heaven that is a body of elect and men made perfect. I'm kind of paraphrasing another Bible phrase, but nonetheless, that the kingdom of heaven in relation to the mystery tradition is the means by which men and women can attain and can achieve and can accomplish they can bring in new acknowledgments into their lives. And so the kingdom of heaven is basically, again, neither a location nor a condition, but is more so a body of individuals who have gone through a series of tests and trials, sometimes referred to as initiations, in order to maintain and attain a state of perfection. Now, certainly perfection is going to be a relative term as to who we would consider perfect or not perfect. But according to esoteric tradition, those that no longer have the need to reincarnate because they no longer have a desire for the earth plane and for material things. And so this kingdom of heaven is also considered the kingdom of souls. When individuals have attained a state or consciousness in which the soul predominates and the ideas of competition and all the different distractions that come from our material plane existence are relegated to their proper place, then one can proceed with pure reason, with unadulterated intuition as their means by which they're able to gauge, move, and manifest some portion of the will of God. And so again, this elect body of individuals that have gained perfection, have attained some point of evolution that exceeds what the average man has accomplished, find their way magnetically drawn into this group. And it has a definite hierarchical structure, and that is another term for this group, is the hierarchy, in which there are not elected so much, but offices and positions into which individuals find their way, again, not elected, but by virtue of a magnetic rapport, by virtue of having within their nature certain aspects that allow them to best be the individuals to fill these particular positions in this group or this body. And so there is from time to time moving out of the ranks, and this is also wherein we see humanity finding its way into this group of esteemed individuals through its lower ranks. And so humanity is brought in to this kingdom of heaven, or to this group of souls, this hierarchy, whatever term you choose to use, by virtue of their own efforts and by virtue, again, of some kind of a magnetic rapport, some means, some energy, some force that attracts them to one another and to some particular work that is along the lines of service to humanity. And so again, the kingdom itself is, again, not a mystical place or location, but an actual working body of executives might be one way to consider it. And that another term, Christ in the Church Invisible, would equally apply, in that there is, again, this kind of like a cabinet in our country, that you have an executive person and you have the various cabinet members that are able to bring their expertise to their various areas of endeavor to make the whole system work properly. And so again, our governmental structures mimic or try to take on some characteristics of this hierarchy. And this is only right and proper, as our human kingdom is the fourth kingdom in nature in relation to this kingdom of heaven, so-called, being the fifth kingdom in nature. And so there's a definite relation. They're both human kingdoms, so-called. It's just that the fifth kingdom, or the kingdom of heaven, is the kingdom of perfected men and women, whereas our humanity is the working out process. It's the training ground to find ourselves, to make ourselves fit to be participants in this so-called kingdom of heaven. And so, again, knowing the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, this, I think, is best determined by each individual by their own searching, their own individual seeking. And those that take the opportunity, first of all, they have to want to consider these things. That's the first thing. There has to be the will to understand a mystery, to even consider that there is a mystery, and to want to ascertain or perceive into this mystery. And so once that will demonstrates itself, then we have to earnestly seek and internally ask of ourselves what it is that we can do to further give ourselves some methods of revelation and understanding, and whatever process that we can consider to try to, again, either unravel these mysteries or try to gain a greater understanding and try to wade our way through, because again, there's much religious. There are a lot of religious writings and things of this nature, that philosophical writings and what have you, that kind of give us some guidelines as far as a moral way of living and ways to conduct ourselves. But each person has to gauge any information in their own heart and ascertain if this is something that's right and proper for me personally, or is this something that I have no interest in and I just need to let it go and maybe come back to it another time, or something of that nature. But the idea that there are these mysteries that have been with us from time immemorial and that are always revisited through time, and that humanity revisits these mysteries as is right and fit and proper for the times, for their point of evolution. And so these Christian mysteries have found their way into manifestation in a previous cyclic age. And so the age of Pisces, so-called 2,000 years ago, found the advent of these Christian mysteries becoming more commonplace, and the coloration of the mysteries, again, taking on Christian connotations, and the mystery tradition trappings were receding into the background more so. And so the basic ideas of initiation and the names for the basic initiations that are cataloged in the Bible narrative and in other religious records basically break down to birth, baptism, transfiguration, death, and resurrection, or rebirth. These five essentially give for us the story of any son of God through any religious tradition that has been able to take their own will and their own God-given capacities and abilities and merge that will with the will of God at some level. Also, our human history can be considered an approach of the will of God to humanity, and emerging and interacting and acquiescing with that will over time. The will nature has been, again, finding its way into our humanity and getting to the point where traditionally we would need mediators. We would need the kingdom of heaven, so-called, to step down the will energy for our humanity, for our consumption, for our understanding. But more so, especially since 1975, if you really want to look at a date, the will has been, the will aspect of God has been manifesting itself in a means that directly relates to our humanity. And so there is a will-to-will connect, if you will, that allows for greater potency, greater understanding, and a greater cooperation and cohesive ability between all humanity. And we see this nearing itself more so and more so, and becoming more manifest in all various aspects of human endeavor. So this is something that we'll have to watch with care and consideration as time progresses. And so again, I'll go more so into details regarding these mysteries and various qualities and components of these specific five that I've mentioned, that again are going to comprise the narratives in the Gospels. And these very five simple words or terms pretty much sum up the entire Gospel narratives or any of the previous myths or legends of solar saviors from previous cultures. Again, birth, baptism, transfiguration, death, and rebirth. This is throughout time been the pattern. And this is another point to consider, that there have always been previous solar saviors that have portrayed this drama. They've acted out this drama. And so they've impregnated the minds of men with this method, this means, this pattern. And so this has always been the pattern for humanity. The power through which this pattern is enacted has also been drawing ever nearer to humanity, and that power would be Christ. Differentiating Christ and Jesus, or Christ and any of the previous solar saviors that have taken on that Christ nature, that Christ energy at some level for the previous work that's been done. So again, the Christ nature has been nearing humanity and continues to embrace our humanity. As I stated previously, the previous 2,000-year dispensation, the Piscean dispensation of these mystery traditions and these 5 points of initiation, found their way into Christian phraseology and colorings, again, 2,000 years ago. But the really overwhelming component and the really comprehensive component to Christianity is that Christ will also take up another series of work, another 2,000-year period of work that is characterized by the Aquarian astrological dispensation and the ideas of synthesis and cooperation and sharing and exchange that will continue to manifest themselves in our humanity as the nature of Christ manifests itself more so into individual men and also in group formation, and ultimately as a culmination of the kingdom of heaven merging with the kingdom of men manifests itself more so and more so, that this group of perfected individuals will work with humanity, and Christ and the Church Invisible will form a merging and an active bond and a union on the physical plane for the conducting of world affairs. And this is something that all great world religions look for a world teacher. The Christian calls the world teacher Christ, and there are different names from other world religions as well, equally adequate. But the point being is that they all look for the same great personage. The same great world Savior is the same Savior across the board. And so Christ is much more comprehensive than many individuals would care to give credence to. This is something that, to me, is a definite source of inspiration when I can look, again, through comparative religion and other sources and other means and see how Christ has been able to merge and become gradually more apparent and more active within our humanity. We can see the story through the great solar saviors of Christ merging gradually with men. And through Jesus, this was the probably, well, I would say yes, the most perfect and the most powerful and potent enacting of the second aspect of the Trinity, Christ, with our human nature. And so this still has a way to continue to pervade our humanity, and it's yet to really pervade our humanity in a way in which it might still, if we can understand these mysteries, embrace these ideas, and seek first the kingdom and try to ascertain what exactly is that kingdom, and how can we also have some affiliation or ultimately membership into that kingdom. So also there's an idea that there will be a restoration of certain concepts, and that right human relations will be restored through this restoration, this energetic exchange, and that some components of this would be, to start with, the science of invocation and evocation. And one component of that will be taking into consideration the new and full moon cycles, and that this has a definite effect on our humanity, and that we can take into consideration these energies as they wax and wane, and we can make use of them in a ritual fashion. And this will take on more implications in the future for us. This is also part and parcel of this divine approach of divinity to humanity, its receding, and then its proper recurring throughout time when the impulse is needed through for any culture at any various time in humanity's history. And so invocation is a calling in. If we invoke something, we are calling in or calling down some energy, some essence. Evocation is when this is brought out. It's when it's evoked from something. If you evoke some emotion from someone, if you evoke anger or you evoke joy from someone, we draw out this energy, this capacity. And so this is a magnetic exchange, and it's a rhythmic relationship as well in the idea of invocation, evocation. We call down and we evoke, we draw forth by our whims and our wishes and our prayers and our desires, something of a divine nature. And so this divine nature, or this divine energy, is always ready and in abundancy. It's just focusing and drawing from that well, that abundancy, and tapping into that unending source of potential. And so also the law of rebirth and the ideas of karma and reincarnation will be more considered, because this is through various lifetimes we find ourselves into the kingdom. It's not a one-shot deal where you have one lifetime to try to maintain and perfect yourself and get it right, or else you burn eternally. I certainly don't subscribe to that view, even in the most, or even in the most minimal sense. Also, again, the initiation science, where we through our own tests and trials have a series of revelations or acknowledgments. Again, we collectively reach a plateau in our understanding. This can be individually or in a group fashion, and that we, from that understanding, can collectively move forward. So these acknowledgments lead to other fuller expansions of consciousness and other greater acknowledgments. And it's a continually unfolding process through the initiation sciences. Also, the fact of the hierarchy, so-called, or Christ and the Church Invisible, will become more prevalent and pregnant in the minds of men, and means by which we can actively work with this kingdom will be more so considered. And so merging between those perfected men and women and our human kingdom will again be more considered, and it will carry more weight and moment for individuals in the future, and different means will be considered in which to draw closer that rapport, to build that magnetic relationship, and to strengthen the bonds that exist already, but can be further focused and refined, and more potency can be extracted from that relationship. And so one great tool that's been provided to humanity through this group, through this kingdom of souls, or through the kingdom of heaven, is a prayer called the Great Invocation. And I would like to impose upon the fine folks in the viewing audience, if people would consider using this prayer with me briefly. I'm just going to take a second to read the prayer and try to envision the merging of the kingdom of heaven. Also, I would ask that we please consider a fuller understanding of the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, and so that by collectively using this invocation, we can again refocus our energies and strengthen this relationship between these various kingdoms in nature. And so if I can briefly read this great invocation and ask everyone that's interested to please join along, either read the words or just listen in your minds, and try to envision this relationship becoming more real and substantial between our humanity and the kingdom of heaven. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. And I'd like to thank everyone that helped me to add their sentiment and their voices along to focus that energy. The use of that prayer has been steadily increasing since about 1945, and it's also been translated into a lot of various languages around the world. And just as with anything, the more individuals that are using it, certainly, and the more people that are considering it as a potent tool to to transition or to be a vehicle for change, the more weight and meaning it will really carry into manifestation. Just like the biblical saying about two or more gathering and agreeing upon something, this has the same exact ramifications in that as more and more individuals gather and agree upon things, they have a way by which they can draw them into real manifestation. Energy follows thought, as the physicists tell us, and as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. And so as we choose to direct our thoughts, this is going to allow us to have more of an understanding of the kingdom of heaven, if we choose to contemplate that, or the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, so-called. That the mystery tradition, some people tend to look at things that predate Christianity as being evil or negative or outmoded and no longer useful. I, on the other hand, look at the mystery tradition as a gradual nearing from, again, time immemorial with our humanity by Christ. And so this second aspect of the Trinity, or this great energy, gradually merges itself with our humanity throughout time. And this is a cyclic unfolding that takes place over time. And the mystery tradition has demonstrated and provided the vehicle for, again, a gradual nearing of Christ to our humanity, and that it has ultimately found its way into a Christian dispensation of these mysteries, and that this will gain and will maintain and gain more momentum as this initiation science is considered more so. Test and trial has always been an aspect of our humanity from the get-go, but as we learn to take advantage more so of adversity and learn to use, again, more of a scientific method to approach these the various crises that come into our lives, whether that's individually or collectively, we can find a way to wade through with greater success. And this again is another aspect of our human nature unfolding, that our evolution is a story of the nature of mind coming closer to, or becoming more potent rather, in our humanity. And the sense of discrimination that is a quality of mind is also more so considered. There's also another saying in the Bible about Jesus or Christ claiming to bring a sword when he returns. And the idea that the sword cuts and cleaves, and too often that interpretation has been given over to, well, there's going to be some kind of a destroying of forms, or some kind of a cutting away, or that it's going to take some violence. There's going to be some kind of violent cleavage, some kind of violent cutting away. But in actuality, the sword has always esoterically been, again, a symbol of cleavage or cutting away, in the respect that the material nature and the spiritual nature form a duality, or form two poles of one substance. And so a material nature and our inclination towards material gains and attaining things is going to diminish greatly. And this we will see as Christ steadily draws nearer to our humanity, in that we're going to, again, lose our lust for material things more so and more so, and we're going to gain more so insight and understanding into the true nature of what is, the causes behind the physical plane effects, and we will seek first the kingdom. And so I think we will see people in the future looking at these mysteries in a different manner, and them taking on much more significance. Again, esoteric tradition maintains that both the church and Masonry have held within their symbolism the basic, they've held the symbols, if you want to use that term, I guess, for what will be later released. The energy is held within the symbol, and when the symbol is rightly interpreted, then the energy is released. And so when the proper interpretation of not only what's been contained through Masonry and its rituals and what has been preserved through the church, through the ritual of the church, will find some re-emphasis, then again, this mystery tradition will take on more significance, and it will be something that will be more of an educational pursuit, like a university system pursuit. And I think we'll see that being more prevalent in the future, that the mysteries will restore themselves, not only to mention that as the fifth kingdom, the so-called kingdom of heaven, merges and nears with our human kingdom, that this will allow for this exchange to take place. And so these masters, so-called, will be more like instructors, and they will be more, again, taking on an executive role, working actively with humanity to restore systems that allow for the most optimum output, the most maximum production, for the best workings out for the most people. And so this is yet to manifest itself on the physical plane, actually, honestly. But we can see embryonic steps towards this as different groups start to make an approach towards collectively working together along these different areas of endeavor. And they're going to vary according to the different interests, whether they be governmental, whether they be social programs, religious reform, financial reform. I mean, you name it. That's still yet to really demonstrate itself on a real mass scale. But nonetheless, there are pockets around the globe that are approaching these ideas, and they have ready-made solutions already. They're already considering solutions for on a global scale for a lot of these problems. It's just that the entrenched establishment is so unyielding still. They're quite Piscean in their domination, and they're holding on to old, outmoded, no longer useful ways and means to conduct our affairs. And so as these lose influence, and their ideas no longer hold sway with the minds of men, you're going to see different options come into play, and that individuals, again, and groups with the right answers will appear at the right times to bring forth some alleviation to suffering and some practical solutions to the difficult problems that humanity faces. Now again, getting back to the idea of rebirth and karma, there has been much collective karma that's held down not only individuals, but nations and our humanity collectively, that still weighs over us like an ominous fog or like a dark cloud, and that until we're able to dissipate the glamours, the illusions, and the misconceptions that we've helped to build and maintain, then still the clarity, the real crystal clarity, was going to elude us. And so that's yet to demonstrate itself as well, that we are able to get past some of our old karma and the old energies that have held us back, and they're somewhat retrogressive, if you will, and that again keep us held back, prevent us from really seeing a clear vision of how we can proceed collectively. And so as we're able to, again, delve more into the mysteries of the kingdom, these things will develop a sense of clarity for us. And some ideas, again, about maintaining some relationship with with this kingdom of heaven, so-called, and some ideas of how to strengthen the ties and relationships. The first thing that I would recommend, once someone has decided that they want to understand or approach this energy, this group, however you want to term it, would be through, again, some introspective, reflective consideration. Meditation is another word that's very appropriate as well. That we internally look into ourselves and gauge where we are with as much honesty as we can, and try to understand, again, our place within our group, whether that be the work, environment, family, city, nation, and on from there. We try to ascertain our place in the greater whole and how we can not only improve our own understanding and our own capacities, but seek to develop the capacities within ourselves to strengthen again those around us. Everyone has their own different abilities and strong points, their creative abilities that they can tap into in order to share and exchange and uplift humanity in some respect. And so again, this is something that I bring up quite frequently and periodically on the show, is to encourage people to consider what it is that you have, your special gifts or your special abilities that you can hone or dust off and get out of the closet, that you can use to help things out. Things at this point in time are a bit strange, and so we're seeing more things coming into light, if you will. More things are coming to light that have been hidden for a long time. And so we're seeing this gradual approach, this gradual nearing, and this gradual, again, revealing or revelation of things that have maintained some mystique or have been just outright hidden from our human understanding for a long time. And so as these things find their way into the light of day, and as human minds are forced to reckon with and understand some of these great mysteries, this is also going to pose a challenge for us. We're right on the brink of so much transition in so many various key components of our humanity that collectively it's allowing for quite a bit of flux. And so in some respects it's difficult to really gauge just how certain things are going to play out with any real sense of accuracy. And so we still have to be cautious and using a discerning sense when we try to approach any particular topic, and try to look within that. As we look within, we also want to use some sense of discernment and try to tap into the utmost and the highest aspects and the highest ideals that we can touch upon and perceive. Some people can take an inner perspective on things, and they're going to tap into negative aspects of either themselves or the atmosphere around them. And so that's a part of this as well, as to what means we can use, and the sense of discernment that we have to always employ, a filtering process, if you will, to take in information and understand it to the best of our ability, and to try to determine what is of real use to us, what is not useful, what is perhaps just completely wrong and fanciful. And so again, the will to seek has to begin first. Seek ye first the kingdom, and then once that will has been established, using of some methodology to extract that will and have some interaction with the kingdom, so-called. There are various ways we can do this. And so again, first of all, the idea that there is a kingdom is something that needs to be considered for this hypothesis. And then again, the will to broach that topic at some level. Let me go ahead and grab a couple of calls. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Hello, caller, line 1.
Hey, do you like sex?
That's an interesting question. Let me go ahead and grab another call. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, this is Tazio.
Hey, how's it going? Good to
How
hear
you
from
doing? Hey, another great program, Corey.
Hey, thanks. I missed you at the meeting last.
Yeah,
last week.
I had the flu or something.
I've been a little
really
under the
knocked me
weather
out
myself
for a
lately.
couple of days.
Okay.
But anyhow,
Yeah, what's up?
We need some timetables, and I'm saying that the next 4 years should prove to be very exciting here in Travis County and probably all over the world.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But especially here, we have some really interesting forces kind of activating here in Central Texas. It's there's an awful lot of clever people here.
True.
And I have Barbara Marciniak in her book, The Family of Light.
Mm-hmm.
She called a place like this the living library. Because it's about a concentration of creative, intellectual capital that all kind of works together for the common good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very nice. The next big date, of course, is December 23rd, 2012. That's when.
I think it's the 21st you're thinking of, but that's.
Well, I like 23, so I always make it the 23rd.
Okay,
But that's definitely where we're headed as far
absolutely.
as the evolution of consciousness. So
I agree completely.
Which means that this is absolutely the greatest time to be incarnated on planet Earth ever.
I agree wholeheartedly.
We are awfully lucky.
True.
All right, that's it.
Okay.
Later, dude.
All right, Semper
Fi.
Fi. Take care. Yeah, I agree, and that's kind of what I brought up that last little set of right on the brink of so many transitions, that this is really an unprecedented time, and so I agree the next 4 years is kind of a pivotal little gauging for us, a point in which we can really do much if we so choose. And so the more people, because there is some time left, and time is always a relative thing as to when people are going to have an increase of perception and a greater understanding of the reality of the situation. So the time perspective is again somewhat relative, but nonetheless, the more things that individuals can do to get themselves enacted and engaged in the transition point or time is going to only help. The more numbers that add their energies and efforts, the better, more qualified we will be as a race to make a much smoother transition, because there's going to be transition nonetheless. It's going to be a matter of a smoother transition or a much more abrupt and distasteful method to bring these things about. So my hope is to encourage enough people to remember what it is that they came here to do, and to start doing it as quickly as possible, and in with the highest intent and putting the best foot forward as much as possible, as quickly as possible. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Okay, I guess you didn't want to speak. That's fine. Thanks for viewing. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Ori?
Yeah.
What actually does esoteric mean? Could you actually please define that?
Sure. I mean, a dictionary would suffice just as equally as well. Esoteric means inner, hidden, or within, and another word that is often interchangeable with esoteric is occult, which also means hidden. It doesn't mean evil, it doesn't mean negative, it doesn't mean nefarious, it just means something that's not readily aware, I guess, a point of awareness in the minds of men. So esoteric means the inner or the soul nature of things, the causative nature of outer plane effects.
And what does all this mean?
What does all that mean? That all means that if we choose to consider our world as a duality, as a mix of, or a ratio of spirit to matter, then we can try to determine, if we so choose, more of the spiritual nature, more of the inner nature, more of the causative nature of our creation, of our manifestation, and seek first the kingdom. Look first towards the inner nature, the causative effect, the cause behind the effect, rather, that will allow us insight into what is real, what is accurate, what is the divine plan for humanity, for creation, what is evolution, why are we here. All those things can be considered in a philosophical, a religious, or a scientific consideration. And so those three things, the inner nature of science, the inner nature of religion, and the inner nature of a philosophical approach, comprise esoteric science collectively. But thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening, Corey.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good. I was curious if you had read that book, Handbook for a New Paradigm, and what were your thoughts on that book? If you thought that was disinformation, or was there something there to it?
Well, actually, on April 23rd of this year, I had George Green, who is the publisher of that very book, on as a guest.
Okay.
Yeah, he and George Humphrey from Common Sense co-hosted the show as well. And he also did a seminar here that we encourage folks to check out. And he also, from George Humphrey's home, was a guest on Coast to Coast, the radio program, but he was kicked off after the first hour. Art Bell was hosting and gave him the boot after the first hour. I tend to think that George Green is a good person, that he is doing much to try to help bring awareness to our human condition, and is trying to alleviate suffering and bring humanity to some point of cooperation. The book is admittedly channeled from the Pleiadians, as you know, some other books are as well. A previous caller mentioned Barbara Marciniak, who's a Pleiadian channelee as well. So whether you choose to believe that channeled information is accurate, that's one thing. Whether you choose to believe that this alien interaction is beneficent or maligned, you know, that's another point of consideration as well. What is the intent of these alien energies? Is this something that he just derived from his own unconscious and just jotted down in a book? Even if that's the case, by reading the books and the other series of books that that George Green published, my own intuitive feeling is that there is sound information contained within those books that can be used as a blueprint for greater understanding. That's just my intuitive feeling on it. And just the whole synchronicity with me coming into contact with that handbook,
Gotcha.
finally meeting George Green, interviewing him, and all the series of synchronicities that have panned out from that relationship have much significance to me personally. So again, everybody has to make up their own mind from their own individual perspective and use a sense of discernment. So that's my 2 cents worth on it. But thank you for the call. I appreciate it.
Appreciate your feedback.
Okay, thanks. Take care. Hello, caller. You on the air? Hello? Caller?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, caller. You on the air? Line 1, you're there. Questions or comments? Line 1? Okay, I guess no comment there. Okay, well, we are kind of running out of time somewhat, so let me just, again, reemphasize that there are a lot of different individuals. There's a lot of information out there. You know, whether it's coming from a mystery tradition of antiquity, from some esoteric group, from some channelee, some contactee, channel information, or what have you. There's a wide variety of information available, historical, some more current, and it's worthy of consideration in many respects. So again, the sense of discernment has to override our emotional considerations, our feeling nature, and our minds, because we want to think, sometimes we want to believe certain things. We're going to be predisposed to thinking a certain way, so we have to be cautious as to how we allow ourselves to think about things, and don't just jump to preconceived notions about things. Certainly previous experience is a teacher for us, but excuse me, we have to just use our own God-given sense of discernment and try to wade through for what's best for us so that we can provide what's best for others. I'm not going to be able to grab these last couple of calls, but thank you for taking the time to call and view nonetheless. I want to encourage folks to check out Therefore I Am every Tuesday at 10 p.m. on Channel 16. I'd like to thank my producer, Chris, for commanding the helm of the Starship Esoterica. I want to remind folks that we are here each and every Thursday, 8 p.m., Channel 11. And want to thank everybody that took the time to view. Thanks, Austin. Have a nice evening. Take care.